Welcome to the Freedom Legal Podcast, where you can come to liberate your lifestyle, liberate your practice, and liberate your relationships. We deliver the most up-to-date insights into the most effective and efficient lifestyle designs, business plans, marketing plans, automation software, and delegation strategies for solo practice lawyers and attorneys. Here is your host, experienced lawyer, writer, and entrepreneur, Jonathan Jaussi.
Hello, Jonathan Jaussi on the Freedom Legal Podcast here. Welcome to the Freedom Legal Podcast, where we come to liberate our lifestyle, our relationships, and our practice. I've been practicing law for 15 years and have successfully built a lifestyle practice where my practice is built around the lifestyle I want to live, not the other way around. I'm excited today to share a topic that I think is so incredibly important. It has to do with priorities and focusing in on the things that actually matter the most. And so today's topic is focusing on only those things that matter most. And I'm going to talk about three different ways that you can do that in your practice. First is delegation to staff. Second is choosing the most important opportunities. And third is making sure that your business is serving you. So let's talk about those. Delegating to staff. Interesting thing about delegation and choosing the most important things. I found a really funny experience that I had in my personal life that really kind of illustrates where we were at. It was, I was about to get married. I think it was about 3 days before my marriage, and this was 22 years ago. My wife and I were both young. We were in our college years and had a lot of life ahead of us and a lot of things that we had to look forward to. She was packing up her room that she had at her mom's house where she had lived over the summer, and I was packing up my room at my apartment where I had been living. And I went to go check on her and see how she was doing, and I found her in the middle of her floor with literally 50 pens and pencils on the ground. And I watched her, I looked at her, she looked at me, and it was quiet for a second. And I said, "So what are you doing? And can I help?" And she says, "Well, I'm sorting these pencils." Okay, and can you tell me a little bit about that? So she told me about how she had all these different pencils and she didn't really want to throw them away, and my wife and I are both very thrifty, and we like to make good value out of things. And I said, "Well, how about we just gather all of those into a bag and we can sort them later? Because right now it seems to me like since we're leaving town tonight, we probably just need to get everything packed in the car and go, and then we can sort the pencils later." And her and I both had a laugh over that and realized, yeah, that's what we needed to do. What had happened was she was nervous and she got really myopic and focused on one little process that really, in the macro scheme of things, wasn't actually that important. If you have the pencils and you want to keep them all, just keep them all. They don't need to be in order. And so that became kind of a phrase we use, and I caught myself doing it at school and at work. And a lot of times she's come to me and helped me out, said, "Hey, Jonathan, are you sorting pencils with that process you're doing at your business?" And I've looked at it and go like, "Oh my goodness, I am." So we need to look at that as we look at doing the most important things. And see, like, okay, have we gotten really myopic where we're looking really granular at something that actually isn't that important? Because sometimes you do need to drill down and get really focused on something, but we can't be focused on everything, otherwise we lose the forest for the trees. So in delegating to staff, my rule of thumb is highest and best use. So my highest and best use as an attorney is to do only those things which only an attorney can do by virtue of his or her license, and then to delegate everything else down to other skilled and competent people. Why is that so important? Well, I realized that all the time that I spend, sorting pencils in my business and working on things that are not necessarily solely lawyer tasks, all of that time displaces time when I could be working on lawyer tasks. Now, this is something that you don't necessarily see a lot of at larger firms, but us solo practitioners, we need to be very guarded about this because we're chief cook and bottle washer. We are doing everything that needs to be done. Usually, a lot of us may have had the additional complication of having started up a firm where we're the only employee. So if there's copies to be made, it's us. If there's advertising to be done, it's us. But we need to have a plan in place and an awareness of how can we delegate that stuff out as quickly as possible. How can we delegate it out? So, for example, at our office, when we have a process that we need to do, we look at it and ask, okay, is that a lawyer task? Is that a paralegal task? Or is that an assistant task? And we move those things down accordingly as much as possible to free up as much of the lawyer's time and the paralegal's time as possible, because those are our billable times. We can bill out for legal time, we can bill out for paralegal time. Even if you're doing contingency work and you seem to feel that you have a lot of time on your hands at the beginning of your practice, you want to get in the habit of this. Once you hire somebody to do those tasks, those assistant tasks, delegating it down and then leaving it delegated. I could say I'm probably the worst about this in the world because micromanagement will absolutely kill your efforts to delegate. It will do two things. First of all, you won't be able to resist the urge to keep checking on things and making sure that they're done right. You will also cause your employees to become hesitant to where they don't dare make decisions on their own because they're not really sure whether you're going to second guess them. So the point there is delegate and then really let those people run. Have them surprise you with how they get it done. Always have a system in place to inspect what you expect, so you want to follow up with them, but you want those to be at predictable increments, like review times or when you're reviewing final products, not during the process of it. So delegation is absolutely key. Okay, so the second area is focusing on profit, focusing on those things that are most profitable. And I've talked about before how there is sometimes in the marketplace a rush to the bottom. You'll see how new technologies will come out, they'll be super, super expensive, and then competition will come in. And then there's 2 or 3 market actors working on that same new technology, and it drives the price down usually. Well, we want to create kind of an opposite effect there, where we are always growing our value in our business. And that ought to be one of the most important things that you're focusing on every time you're in your practice, every time you're in your office or thinking about your job. How do I increase my value to my customers or to my employer? How do I become more valuable while putting out the same amount of effort? Let me repeat that. How do I become more valuable while putting out the same amount of effort? Now, that may sound wrong to you. That may not quite click in your mind, but let me ask you this question. When you think about putting out more value, does your brain immediately go to putting out more hours? Or putting in more physical, mental, or other effort? I want to challenge that as I think very limited thinking. If you will allow your mind to think about the number of hours that you put into your job as a fixed boundary that you won't step over absent just exceptional circumstances. If you have chosen that I am a 40-hour-a-week person or a 50-hour-a-week person, and you set that boundary, hold that boundary. Stick with it. You deserve to have time off, don't you? I mean, isn't that reasonable? Even in the first year of practicing law and building up a business, you still need to live. So if you can't give there, if that's not the place to give, then it becomes necessary to ask, okay, where can I give? I can give in being more creative with my hours, being more valuable. And I've been amazed as I watched myself and others in the business finding out how to get better value out of those hours, more creative ways to get to solutions faster to where we can handle more cases and help more people in bigger ways, and finding bigger problems to tackle where the reward is better. We should always be looking at efficiency in the practice of law and in business in general to see, okay, how can I deliver that? And that's the good news, where it's not like two market actors who are competing on a technology product and driving the price down. You're competing with yourself. You've got yourself the way I currently do it, and you've got yourself the way I could conceivably do it tomorrow and earn more money for the same amount of effort just by being a little more brilliant. So let me encourage you and challenge you to do that. Ask that question every morning as you go into the law practice. Write that somewhere. Can I be more brilliant today? Question mark. And then another question underneath it, what would be the reward? Allow your brain to play with that. I mean, we are in a learned profession, a profession of thinkers, a profession of problem solvers. If you just pose that question to yourself, allow your brain to just work on it in the background. I know you got your work to do, I got it. But in the background, if you just think about that question, you'll be amazed at what will pop up from time to time. And I want to hear about that in the comments. Ideas you come up with that have made a difference. Ideas you come up with that help you to be more efficient, help you to earn more money in less hours while delivering good, honest, creative work for clients. So the third area, and this is one I feel so strongly about focusing on only those things that matter most, is our relationships and our lifestyle. Now let's be candid here. None of us got into the practice of law to be enslaved by it. None of us got into the practice of law because we thought, I'd really like a very difficult college path full of years and years of study and learning so I could be poor. Now, I know I'm being a little flippant and facetious here, but that's not why we did it. And we didn't do it so our relationships could fall to pieces and, marriages being challenged and children's ball games missed and all the things that you see, stereotypical things of people that work too hard and are not really available for those that need them. So that being the case, I'm going to encourage and challenge you to focus on relationships that matter to you. You know what they are. It's why we got into the practice of law, so that we could have a better relationship with ourselves, with our significant others, and for the people around us that we love and care for. Make sure you have been intentional about how you want your practice to support those relationships. Because if the relationship between those key people in your life and you is supported by the practice of law, if it's enriched by the practice of law, life's going to be better. They're going to appreciate you and support your path as an attorney more. And rather than just looking at this and going, well, it's just about hours and numbers and dollars, I'd encourage you to have some fun with this. Get creative. How can you, being an attorney and you having this business or this profession, be a blessing to them? How can it make their life better without them being asked to sacrifice things that they shouldn't? So, if you have suggestions or examples of people you've seen that have done really well with their relationships and their personal life and the things that they care about, balancing that with the practice of law and using the practice of law to support it? I'd love to hear about that in the comments. What is it that people do? I feel like the most important thing that we do as practitioners is to focus on people. We really don't have money problems. When a client comes in and has money problems, or when we as attorneys have money problems, we don't have money problems. In my opinion, we have relationship problems. Because when you find the right business relationship, that money problem is solved, isn't it? We don't have legal problems. We have relationship problems. If you can get the relationship fixed between two warring parties, the legal problem goes away. And that's the key here in this blog and this podcast that I feel so strongly about, and that I want to get a discussion going amongst my colleagues about, is relationships. How can the practice of law actually affirmatively support our relationships? I would love to hear from you in the comments below, and I'd love for you to subscribe and to share this podcast with your colleagues in the practice so that we can continue this discussion. If you have anyone you think would be a good guest on this podcast, please send that in, put it in the comments, put me in contact with this individual, somebody who's got an idea that needs to be heard around the idea of lifestyle, relationships, and practice management for attorneys. I would love to have them on. Thanks for being on the Freedom Legal Podcast. I'm Jonathan Jaussi, your host. Subscribe, and I'll look to see you in the comments and the discussion.
Thank you for listening to the Freedom Legal Podcast. Please visit the podcast website to submit your questions and feedback. Let us help you liberate your lifestyle, liberate your practice, and liberate your relationships. We'll see you next time.